Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today's episode is called You Won't Believe What Your Competition is Stealing from You. And when you see and hear what's going on, you'll be as stunned as I was. Whether you're a business owner or you're an individual, the amount of information and assets that are now under attack is almost beyond measure because these attacks are taking place on an hourly basis. We're going to reveal what they're stealing, how they're stealing it, and how you can protect yourself from these attacks. How much time, money, and effort you put into protecting yourself and your assets is really a function of their value. Obviously, if you're a CEO, if you're a senior executive, if you're an entrepreneur who owns his own small business, then you want to elevate the amount of security that you're putting into place to protect yourself. If you're an individual, maybe you've been compromised by a recent divorce or some entanglement with some individual, and you'll also want to think twice before you do certain things. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to us. I also want to tell you that we are sponsored by a company called Hollywood is Calling. It's a great company that allows you to purchase live phone calls from your favorite celebrities. They can be purchased for yourself or they can be purchased as gifts for other people. There's nothing cooler than getting a live call from a favorite star. Now let's begin. Everybody is preoccupied with IP theft. Everybody is worried about their social security, their credit report, those details. But that is just a small percentage of what's going on out there. Here's a list of some of the threats and attempts that are being made against companies and individuals. The first threat to keep in mind are attacks being made on your executives. Executives are now being approached by companies purporting to want to hire them, and it's being done by shell companies registered overseas so that if you have senior executives or even a CEO that are restricted by non-compete clauses with your company, then they feel a false security in taking these job interviews and job offers because they think that the company approaching them is outside the geographic limitation of your non-compete agreement. So keep that in mind. Whenever you're dealing with a senior or even mid-level executive that you're considering not giving a bonus to, that you're speaking to rudely, factor all of that in, because what you do today may haunt you in 6 months when that person leaves. The next item being stolen are products. Now, it's really clever the way they are stealing your company's products. Within days of one of your products perhaps, debuting on the market, your competitors will purchase copies of them and they'll begin to reverse engineer them. They'll analyze, dismantle, they'll test, they'll build their own version of that product or service, and then they'll have lawyers with engineering degrees standing by to evaluate their reversed engineered version of your product to determine if it could stand a legal test in court for a breach of patent. And they'll keep fine-tuning the process until the company lawyers of your competitors are confident that their reverse engineered version of your product can stand a legal attack in court by your lawyers when you go after them for patent infringement. The next way they go after you is with lawsuits funded by your competitors. These lawsuits will be brought against you to burden your staff, to burden your resources, and to burden your finances. And what they do is they know that bringing a suit against a large company is a very expensive endeavor. And the probability of a win is sometimes there, and it's not very favorable. So what they'll do is they'll invest X number of dollars, 5 million, 10 million, 50 million. I've seen 100 million done. And they'll fight you in court for years And when the lawsuit is settled or won, the entity funding the lawsuit against you will share in the proceeds of that financial victory. The next thing they do are they bring reputational attacks against you. They will hire reporters, they'll hire media organizations, they'll hire companies overseas with hundreds of people sitting at terminals to attack you online, and the intent being to compromise your reputation. Most people don't realize how important an asset their reputation or their company's reputation is. If you can damage it, then you can drive down a company's value, and that makes them a more attractive takeover investment, or it makes their stock a more attractive buy. So damaging somebody's reputation is a very tangential way of achieving the same goal, and that is to steal from you or to force you into a sale at a lower price. And by the way, when they do try to force you into a sale, there's usually language in the buyout agreement preventing you from suing them a year or two later when they realize what you were up to and how you accomplished what you did. Another vector of attack is to use lobbyists against you. These lobbyists will lobby various government agencies and regulatory authorities to attack you and compromise you. And once again, the goal being to drive down your company's value or to compromise you financially, to burden your people, to tie up their time and their energy with these governmental inquiries, and to do so in a way that lowers your value, lowers your company's market value. The next attack comes from something that sounds like a scene out of a Bond movie, but it is growing in popularity. And they're called honeypot attacks. And what your competitors will do is they will hire dozens of stunning looking women and men to apply for executive assistant jobs with your company's senior management. So perhaps your CEO's office or your senior level management, they'll post a job for an executive assistant or a secretary, and these companies will hire dozens of the most stunning women you have ever seen, and they will all apply for the jobs you've posted. And a lot of them will include a stunning set of photos of themselves that'll intrigue your company and your HR people into interviewing them. Now, what's really interesting about this is one of these women will get the job. They'll have several dozen apply. One of them will get the job. And when she does, or when he does, they'll build a relationship with your executive, with your CEO, with whoever. And over time, they'll use that relationship to acquire information, to acquire data. And they'll continue to pass that information along to the competitor who really hired them in the first place and who's probably paying them much more than your company is. So eventually, this individual will run its course and they'll no longer be of use, or maybe they'll be discovered by your staff in some way. And it's usually at that point that they file a false sexual harassment suit, just as a goodbye gift to you on the way out the door. So if you're in a position where you're hiring executive assistants or secretaries, and you come across individuals who are stunningly beautiful, extremely charming, and they're applying for these positions, especially if they have foreign accents. Be really careful if they have foreign accents, because a lot of offshore companies are sending in their best and their brightest and their best looking people to compromise you. If that happens, then be very, very careful. At the very least, you should flag them for further inquiry. This problem is growing and becoming so substantial that some companies are now encouraging their executives to hire same-sex assistants. So that if you're a male executive, you may be encouraged to hire a male executive assistant, and if you're a female, you may be encouraged to hire a female executive assistant. This is done to diminish fake sexual harassment claims, and it's also done to prevent executives from being blinded by the extraordinary beauty of some of the people applying for these jobs. So just keep that in mind. Another phenomena that is taking place now is that competitors are partnering with hedge funds who have almost infinite resources, and these hedge funds will come after your company in an effort to drive down its stock, to diminish its reputation in the marketplace, and in doing so, everybody benefits. The competitor who partnered with them will benefit because they'll be able to secure your stock or your company at a lower stock price. And the hedge fund, which will, of course, invest a ton of money in you as an acquisition target, will also benefit by driving down your company's value. Another real growing threat is being vectored at ex-wives and ex-partners. If you think that your intellectual property is being surveyed and analyzed, if you think that your other assets are under threat, then you should expand your scope of concern to ex-wives and ex-romantic partners, because competitors are now approaching, or they're hiring people to approach, your embittered ex-wives, your embittered ex-girlfriends or boyfriends, and these people are being paid for information that will compromise you. The longer the relationship you have with somebody, chances are the more information they have about you. This is just a function of being in a relationship. And a lot of that information can be used to compromise you at a later date. It can be used to compromise your company. And it may not even be a direct attack on a direct and specific piece of information. It could be something indirect, which can be used to lead them to important information elsewhere. This is now why a lot of smart companies are asking both their employee and their employee's partner or spouse to sign the severance agreement. The severance agreement will include NDAs and non-competes, which will tie up the spouse or the partner and prevent them from compromising their husband or their wife, down the road when they file a divorce in 5 or 10 years. The next threat is posed by social media. If you're an individual and you have personal social media accounts on the various services, you need to quarantine that immediately. Don't put any information on there that your worst enemy can't use against you today or tomorrow. This is really important. Don't boast about your recent acquisitions. Don't geolocate any of the information that you put on there. Don't show people where you live. Don't talk about what city you live in. Don't talk about where you're going to be vacationing. There is no benefit to doing this. If you want to impress people on a face-to-face basis with your actions. Don't blast social media with information that people with nefarious intent can use to compromise you. This goes on 24 hours a day. It's going on in Hollywood. It's going on in Silicon Valley. It's going on on Wall Street. It's really going on in Washington, D.C., where people are blasting their social media with all sorts of tidbits that they hope will elevate their profile enough to get a better job offer from them. But really, all it's doing is it's causing the predators to hone in on you. Now, if you have corporate social media that's making you money, then obviously you have to continue that. Just have it vetted very carefully by legal and by your PR staff. You don't want to inform competitors with anything that will benefit them. You don't want to obviously invite litigation. Take great lengths to vet your social media, whether it's personal or corporate. Another threat is LinkedIn. People who would never open spam, never open email from a stranger, but maybe they've posted a job or they're looking for a job on LinkedIn and they've opened an account there. Those people will not think twice about opening email from a prospective employer that wants to interview them or that wants to make them a job offer. Um, the minute you do that, you have to weigh the risk. Is this a legitimate company making a legitimate interview request? Or is this a scam of some sort designed to get me to wittingly or unwittingly breach my non-compete or to milk me for information at the job interview? A lot of times they won't even offer you a job. They'll just give you a 3 or 4 hour job interview on their corporate campus, and you'll be interviewed by 3, 4, 5, 6 different employees at various levels of the company, and they'll ask you so many questions about your current employment, and they don't have any desire whatsoever to hire you. They're simply milking you for information that will be transferred to their real employer, which is one of your competitors. The next thing you need to monitor are your credit reports. If your credit report shows economic deficiencies or challenges of some sort, you should know that both future employers and future business partners, companies you're thinking of doing business with, they'll check out your credit report to see how compromised you are financially. And if you are, they'll leverage that information to make you a cheaper job offer or a more challenging partnership agreement that will give most of the advantages to them. So be mindful of that. The next form of IP theft is performed by something called the flash drive scam. And what they'll do is they'll pepper your entire parking lot with flash drives. There'll be flash drives laying by the door to your car. There'll be flash drives laying by the entrance to the building. There'll be a couple dozen throughout the whole parking lot. And these flash drives will be marked. They'll be marked with an executive's name. They'll be marked with the word confidential. They'll be marked with the name of one of your competitors. They'll be marked with the words "do not circulate," "do not read," and it's all designed to entice at least one of your employees to pick it up, walk into work, and when no one's looking, insert it into their laptop, into their company laptop, and read it. And the moment they do that, the malware on the flash drive infects your company's network, and then it's off to the races. Then they begin to steal even more and more of your IP and of your assets and even your actual funds. Everybody's familiar with ransomware attacks. There are cities all over the country now that are being blackmailed by hackers who've seized control of their computers and they have scrambled everything, and then they're extorting 5,000, 50,000, 500,000 and saying that if they don't pay within X number of days, that all their information will be deleted. And of course, what do these municipalities do? They contact their IP departments, they contact the FBI, and the FBI always says the same thing: don't pay. So what does the city do? The city then does a cost-benefit analysis, and the cost of having the hacker restore all your information, it might be 50,000, it might be 500,000. And the cost of having all the data on their company servers scrambled or deleted, that runs into the millions. 9 times out of 10, they will settle and they will pay. So everybody knows that their company staff is under attack, and everybody suspects it's the CEOs or senior level management. But that oftentimes is not where the greatest threat is posed. The real threats, the threats you should be most worried about, are your innovators, your scientists, your engineers, your chemists, your software engineers. Software engineers are being made obscene job offers now by competitors. And when they come to you and they tell you that, I've been offered $50,000 or $100,000 more to go work for another company, your first question or your first response should not be, well, I might be able to match that. Your first response should be, let's see what we can do, and then get back to them and at the very least match it. Because the offer being made to them, it may be legitimate from another company in the marketplace, or it may be an offer from somebody who wants to hire your top engineers, your top innovators, and then milk them for information. And if you think that a non-disclosure or a non-compete is going to protect you, it's not. Ask all the people who've been ripped off by foreign companies. Ask all the people who've had their products reverse engineered by competitors. Non-disclosures and non-competes, on a scale of 1 to 10, I put their value at 5, maybe, because there are just too many workarounds. And any lawyer worth his salt will be able to circumvent them. The next threat is staff that's been recently fired by your company. No matter how polite, how courteous, how empathetic your HR people are to your staff that have been recently fired, believe me, they are all pissed and they're all plotting the revenge. Most won't go through with it, but a lot of them are. And all it takes is the wrong person to make the wrong offer, and these people will sell you out faster than you can blink of an eye. So I encourage you to think twice before you fire somebody or lay them off, or try to replace them with a foreign worker who you want them to be, who you then want your current worker to train. When you do that, you are sending the message that your company cannot be trusted, does not value its employees, and you're also opening up Pandora's box on future threats. Another issue are vendors that just lost a contract with you. If somebody just received an email from your manager saying we're going to cancel that, or we're not going to renew that $2 million annual contract we have with you. We've gone with a lower cost vendor. Believe me, these people don't just become ex-vendors. They now will be approaching your competitors and undercutting you. And so everything you do has consequences that you have to evaluate very carefully. The next vulnerability are larger plaintiffs who are suing your company. When these people are suing you, they're also being approached by your competitors, by the lawyers of your competitors, by the CEOs of your competitors, and by third parties hired to act on their behalf. And they're working with them in an effort to obtain as much compromising information against you as they possibly can. This may be done to promote future litigation, or just to get as much product information against you as they can. The next target of opportunity are analysts and reporters who suspect that you may be engaging in wrongdoing. The minute an article appears that suggests that you or your company may be involved in some sort of nefarious activity, the floodgates open, Pandora's box explodes, and now more analysts and more reporters will be fed with information by your competitors in an effort to compromise you once again and to diminish your company's valuation. Another problem are ex-spouses and ex-partners of your senior executives, engineers, patent creators. The threat level here is at least equal to the threat posed by foreign companies trying to steal your IP. The reason it's such a significant threat is that nobody thinks about the threat posed by ex-spouses. A spouse or an ex-partner, ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, they almost always walk away with bitterness. And they're easy prey for corporate predators approaching them with financial offers. If you just tell us this, this, and this, we'll pay you X. We'll pay you $10,000. We'll pay you $50,000 depending on the value of their information. And that happens a lot. And that will sink your company if the information is damaging enough. Think about that. It never ceases to amaze me how companies will spend hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to bring a new product or technology to market, and then limit their security to some commercially available antivirus software, some off-the-shelf software that every hacker is familiar with and can already backdoor. I recommend that every company and every individual do two things. One, they should air gap their computers. You need two sets of computers. One computer, and once again this applies whether you're an individual or a corporate entity, one computer which is air gapped. It's got all your personal and highly sensitive and critical information on it, and it should never ever be attached to the internet. The other computer system can be attached to the internet, but it should never have anything remotely sensitive or embarrassing on it. And this will create an air firewall, if you will, that prevents your two forms of information and data and assets from being as vulnerable as they would if they were on a system that the internet could access. In my opinion, if you're not spending 2% of your adjusted gross on security, for your information, for your assets, for your data, for your staff, then you're engaging in corporate malpractice that I think could be held against you by the board at some point in the future, especially if you're attacked. Just look at a lot of these Fortune 500 companies who have experienced incredible hack attacks, theft of client data, theft of new product IP. Watch what happens. You'll be shocked at the number of staff who are quietly let go months after the problem has been solved. How well you're protected is entirely up to you. A lot of individuals and companies make the mistake of believing that if they get hacked, if they get compromised, and they call the police or the federal authorities, that they'll come riding to the rescue, they'll track the bad guy down over the internet, they'll get your money back, and that almost never happens. The reason it never happens or happens so infrequently is it is incredibly difficult to do. It is often well beyond the ability of local police departments, and even the federal authorities have tremendous difficulty tracking down hackers and ransomware experts and other thieves who demand payment in Bitcoin. So think long and hard, when you think about cutting back the IT security budgets of your company, or when you think that if something bad happens in the future, I'll just call the feds. The feds may talk to you, but they're being inundated by so many hacks being performed against so many companies and entities that their resources are being diminished by all these attacks. There's only so much they can do. The feds are trying their best. They're doing whatever they can, but the amount of attacks being performed now run into the thousands per minute. Thousands of attacks per minute per organization. So some of these attacks can be stopped, guarded against, but a lot of them get through and you just don't hear about it. So keep that in mind. Another problem is being caused by phony internal wire transfer requests by email. You or your chief financial officer may get a wire transfer request coming from somebody internally or from a client that you actually owe the money to, that asks you to transfer X number of dollars to that individual. And when you go through the books, you may realize that you do actually owe them money for this invoice. And so your accounting department checks the email and wires the money. And then a week later or a month later, the client contacts you and asks you, why didn't you wire us the money? And your guy says, we did. And then the client says, we never received anything. The reason is the email that was received by your people looked very legitimate, except the accounting and the routing numbers were changed. And that's the problem. Once that money is wired, it's gone. So you have to put second and third level checks into place to make sure that you verify by phone and electronically that the accounting number you're being asked to, accounting and routing number that you're being asked to send the funds to is correct. Because once it's gone, it's sent. So with that, I want to wish you luck and remind you to always exercise professional paranoia, because the absence of professional paranoia when you're conducting business or even in your personal life sometimes is the first clue that you're about to be destroyed by a hack or by a nefarious competitor who's going to engage in all sorts of nefarious activity to compromise you. Good luck.